Hello, my name is Elaine Leeder, and this podcast called From Despair to Repentance, Jews, Spirituality, and Restorative Justice. This program is sponsored by the Institute for Jewish Spirituality and Society, where I am a fellow. The mission of IJSS is to advance scholarship, social transformation, bringing spiritual knowledge to bear on the toughest challenges of contemporary society. We break down barriers between spheres of knowledge and practice, enabling long-term collaboration between scholars, social researchers, and human service practitioners. And today, with a recipient and participant of a restorative justice process. I ask you to visit us at www.ijss.org to find out more about what we do. In my capacity as a fellow, I've been speaking around the country about restorative justice using a spiritual lens. This year marks the second year with podcasts, bringing you people who are both engaging in the work on the ground, real people, but imbuing what they do or have experienced with a spiritual lens. To that end, I am thrilled to introduce you today to my friend Melissa Caseri, with whom I did a restorative justice process 3 years ago in 2022. She was the child of a victim of a murder. She'll tell the whole story, and met with the man who actually killed her father. And it was a transformative experience both for him as well as her and me and her entire family. So, Melissa, thank you so very much for joining me today. I wonder if you might just tell us who you are and a little bit about your background.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name's Melissa. I am 39 years old. I am married. I have three children who are now ages 21, 19, and 18. Um, my father was murdered in 1993 when I was six, turning 7 years old, and ever since then, it just catapulted our life into lots of destruction. I grew up very troubled and angry. My mom witnessed my father's murder, and she didn't heal and didn't work on her healing as much as she should have. And so it catapulted us in our journey in our childhood. I made a lot of mistakes and I caused a lot of harm in life, towards myself, towards other people. I had children at a very young age, and my children had to suffer because of everything. I didn't work on my own healing. I didn't know what it was like to love and to be supported. And I continued to pass those cycles on to my children. I lost custody of my kids when they were young. And back in 2022, I ended up choosing to have my victim offender dialogue with the man who took my father's life. Like I said, I grew up with a lot of hate. I was extremely angry during my childhood. All I wanted to do was fight everything and everybody. And it just made for the journey that I went on. And yeah.
And tell me, Melissa, how did you happen to become involved in a victim offender dialogue? What brought you to it, and what was the path to even asking for one?
Well, at his last parole hearing, before 2022, he had declined to come out and he took a 5 year stipulation.
You were
And
present for that hearing?
yes, I was present. ev- Since I turned 18, I've been present for every hearing of his. And he came out a few of his hearings, but the last time he chose not to come out. And I I wanted to know why. I wanted him to come out. I wanted to talk to him. I just wanted to talk to him and say, you know what, I forgive you and I want to move forward with my life. And that was it. That was the only thought I had. And then when the pandemic hit, I watched as we all just went stir crazy, not being able to leave our homes. And I started to wonder and think about what prison does psychologically to the men and women inside. And and that's when I said, I just have to meet him. I want to meet him. And when I chose to want to meet him, I wasn't looking for an apology. I wasn't looking for a story. I wasn't looking for any of that. I just wanted to know who he was as a human being and try to see how this came about and what can I do in my life to make sure that something like this never happens again, because eventually he will be out. He served his time. And so I there was just something yelling at me inside to go meet him. I don't know what it was. I always say throughout this that it was my dad guiding me and there with me, because he saw all all the hurt and pain that I was in. I continued the pain and the anger all throughout my adulthood. I partied, I did lots of drugs. I was hurting myself and damaging myself in so many ways. And I truly feel that if I didn't go down this path, I wouldn't be alive today.
Mm.
And so, oh God.
No, please go on.
And so that's when I decided to take the steps to reach out to victim services and say, how can I do this? What can I do? Can I just go visit him? I didn't know how it all worked. And that's when I was put in touch with Martina. And then I got put in touch with you and Noel, my two amazing facilitators. And that's when that journey began.
And could you describe the process? And for the audience, let me tell you that in California, if a victim or victim's family wants to meet with the person who did the crime, they contact victim services in the California Department of Corrections. And they have a victim service office, and they have a contract with agencies to facilitate dialogue. So the Martina that she's mentioning works for an organization called Ahimsa, which is the one that I was the volunteer for. And Martina knew that Noel and I were ready to take on a new case. And so we were given Melissa's name. And now, if you could describe the process once Noel and I got into your life.
Yes. So you and Noel, you guys emailed me a few times back and forth, had some phone calls, asked a lot of questions to make sure that I was truly ready for this next step and what I wanted out of all of this. You guys also both flew out to where I'm at, which is Las Vegas, and you met with me and my husband, who was also part of the victim offender dialogue, and my mother-in-law. We FaceTimed her for her to be a part of it. And we sat down, you asked questions, we asked questions, and you guys just prepared me completely for what I was going to expect when going in. You guys also told me that because of the pandemic, that it may be some time before I ended up going inside, but I don't know what happened, but miraculously we ended up going in a lot sooner than we expected. And right after Thanksgiving was when we ended up going inside. But the whole way along, I was prepared. I was told what to expect. I was guided along the way the whole time. There was never a time where I felt alone in this process. I talk about Elaine and Noel so much and the beautiful thing that they provided me. It was a huge support system.
Good. And let me also say for the audience, while we were meeting with Melissa, we also went into the prison a number of times to prepare the man who did the crime so that he knew what to expect. And so it was a comparable process going on at the same time. We went there probably twice. I think we met with you once in person, but a number of contacts and prepared him as well, asking him what motivates him for doing this and how he felt about it. Mostly, I would say he was very fearful. He was really afraid of being chastised, of blamed. He had a lot of remorse, but I'll let you tell his what happened when you met him. But the preparation went on probably for about 6 months, I think, before we were actually able to bring You, your mother-in-law, your husband, Noel, myself, and the man who did the crime together in the prison. So take it from there, Melissa. What was it like going up there? And I'm not going to mention the prison, but it was a process. So describe what happened.
Oh man, I remember that overwhelming feeling going in that morning. I remember walking in and and the whole process of getting checked in. And I remember sitting in a hallway and them saying they were going to get him. I remember them walking him by in shackles and them telling him not to look at me and walking him into that room. And all I can do was wonder what was going to happen next. I didn't know whether I was going to go in and just be angry, upset. I didn't know if I wanted to hug him. I didn't know. I just had this overwhelming feeling. And once they got him in and they allowed us to go in, I remember walking in and looking at him and just wanting to hug him.
Mm.
We went up and we hugged and we cried before sitting down. And once we sat down, I just wanted to talk to him. I just wanted to know who he was as a human being. And that's when I learned about who he was and his childhood and his upbringing. And of
Elaborate on that a little.
Yeah, so he was constantly in a fight or flight mode. He had a very troubled upbringing. He was introduced to drugs and alcohol at a very young age. His parents always fought each other. They also were involved with heavy alcohol use, and he was constantly in fight or flight mode. He was taught to box with his brothers. He was taught to defend himself all the time. um, I I got to know who he was. I Nothing will ever explain why my dad's life was taken that night, but I've come to learn and understand who Matthew was as a person and how it happened. I don't think that he woke up that day saying I want to take somebody's life. I think that drugs and alcohol played a huge factor in it, and I think that his upbringing played a huge factor in the things that happened that night. I realized that he was a human being who made a mistake. I realized that his mistake happened within seconds, that his whole life changed within seconds. I I realized at that moment that all I wanted to do was say, I forgive you. I wanted to forgive him, and I wanted to the reason why is because I wanted him to know that life in prison wasn't the only thing for him, that he was allowed to move forward in his life. I think that there's such a barrier when it comes to victims and the person who committed the crime. I feel like there's a barrier set right at the beginning of it that teaches hate and that doesn't teach healing or forgiveness. When all of it happened, we wrote letters. He was told not to look at us. We were told not to talk to each other. And so I just had so much hate in my heart for this man. I was 7 years old and I wrote to the judge and I said, please give him the death penalty at 7 years old. And I hated him. And I said he deserved to be there for the crime that he committed. After meeting him and talking to him, I realized he was just a young kid. I didn't start growing up until my 30s. I did not start getting my life together until my 30s. He was only 22 years old, 23 years old when this happened. He was still a child who hadn't fully developed, who didn't have guidance in his life at all. And and so I just learned so much about him.
Didn't he also describe the incident to you in a way that you had not understood it to happen? Wasn't that part of it or not?
So I originally said I do not want to hear the story because he has been telling the story for now 23 years, and I wasn't going to take that away from him. I think that everybody that night, they were at a birthday party. The person who took my father's life was my uncle's best friend. And they were at this birthday party. And I think that I don't know what the true story is, and I don't want to know what the true story is. He started to tell me the story, and I let him know right away that I didn't want to hear the story because I didn't want it to cause me to become angry because I had taught I had wanted to talk to him before, and he ended up getting a letter to me. And this was before the victim offender dialogue or anything. And when I read that letter, he tried telling me a little bit of the story, and it made me angry. And when I got that letter, I said, okay, it is what it is, and I want nothing to do with him, and that's it. And so he did try to go into detail about the story, and I told him, this isn't what I'm here for. I don't want the story, but I did learn some of it, some of his side of it. And he has always said a certain side to his story. And I'm okay with that. Whether it's true or not, I'm okay. That is his story, and I'm not going to take that away from him. But I do think after our victim offender dialogue and me saying that I forgive him, his story has changed a bit in his mind and in his life. Because for the whole time, never once has he said, I'm sorry, I did it. It was always, I'm sorry, but it wasn't completely me. It was other people that did it. And after we had the victim offender dialogue, it was, I am so sorry that I took your father's life. He took accountability, something that he's never been able to do before.
Did he do
So
that in the setting? I don't remember exactly that day.
he did that day in that setting, and then he continues to do it today.
Are you in communication with him in some way?
I am in communication in some way. I know his partner. He has a very supportive partner in his life who encourages him to continue doing his programs. And so I communicate through her. And we have written letters to each other. And I have talked to his brother as well. So there is that communication still in some ways. And I check in every once in a while, and she checks in every once in a while with me.
I do remember that he was not programming prior to the dialogue. And as a result, something changed. What is he up to now? Or what did he start to do?
Yes, he was not programming at all, and that is the reason why so many of his hearings have gotten denied. But ever since we've had our victim offender dialogue, he has completed programs. He is doing the work. He has transferred to different places so that he is able to have more programs in his life. And they have shown me proof. They always check in. They let me know when a program is completed, and I've checked into it, and he's doing the work. And it's all that I could ever ask for. And it is what I want out of this whole situation.
Let's go to that. I want to know how, and I know your mother-in-law said this, I said this, your husband, everyone was touched by that event. But tell me how it changed you and then how it changed the person who did the crime.
So
First.
it has changed me in more ways than I could ever explain. We don't have enough time for that, but it has led me to my healing journey. It has led me to get all the help that I've wanted and needed in my life. After having my victim offender dialogue, I was put in touch with a program called GRIP. It's Guiding Rage into Power, and it's a year-long accountability program that teaches inmates how to process their feelings, how to take accountability for the crimes that they've committed, and to understand why they have committed these crimes. And I was asked to go inside and speak and to tell my story and about the impact my father's death had on me and my family. And that was life changing to go in there. after I had my victim offender dialogue, I told myself I only wanted to work with victims and survivors, that I would never go inside ever. That's not what I wanted. And then after meeting Matthew, I said, oh my God, that's, I want to go inside. I want to talk to people. I want to share my story and the impact it had on my family, because people don't know when there's so much anger, and so much division, and when these men and women are sentenced and they're just put into a cell and locked away and forgotten about, honestly. And and so I wanted to go in and tell my story and to let them know what the impact the crime had on my entire family. And I remember walking into San Quentin that day. I remember before I went in, my family and people were saying, are you sure that's what you want to do? Are you sure you're going to go into San Quentin? And I said, yes. And I remember walking in and walking around that corner before we got to the yard and being so terrified. We walked around that corner and I saw the whole yard filled with men, and I was absolutely terrified. We ended up going into a building. I ended up sharing my story, and we have questions afterwards. And when I left that day, I came home and I said, if anything was to ever happen to me inside of there, they would have done everything in their power to protect me. I felt so safe. I felt so supported. And and it led me to continue speaking at multiple other prisons. I even got to speak at the Capitol, about bills, about passing bills to help, because my biggest thing is how do we expect these men and women to make changes in their life without having help? Sometimes we all just need a little bit of help and guidance. And if you don't have that support system, how do we expect them to get out and just not cause any harm anymore? And so I wanted to know what I can do and what we as a society can do to understand why these crimes happen and what we can do to help them prevent them. And so I continue to speak in prisons. I continue to speak with victims and survivors. I even get together with the GRIP alumni who have graduated and who are now on the outside. And when I tell you, I have met many of these men, and you would never even know that they have ever committed a crime. They are the most loyal, lovable, changing human beings I've ever met. Because while we're all on the outside, they are doing the work on the inside. And I get it. People are going to say, well, they have no other choice because they're locked up. Awesome. But do you know how hard it is to do the work, to look at yourself in the mirror and take accountability for what you have done in your life? That's the hardest thing that any of us on the outside can do, but these men are choosing to do it in the inside. And I understand that not all of them are, but there are a big group who do want to change, who do want love and peace. And we just, the society looks at them and just looks at them as monsters like I used to look at them.
Let me ask you, Melissa, because this podcast is about spirituality, and it appears that the experience you had in the dialogue and afterwards has really been a very deep kind of emotional, spiritual growth experience for you and for the person who did the crime and for all these other men that you've encountered. I wonder if you would describe an incident when we went and spoke at a synagogue in Santa Rosa, but also about spirituality as it relates to this topic.
Yeah, so I'll start at one right after the victim offender dialogue. It was weird because we ended up leaving at 2:22 and our room number was 222. And when I looked it up, it happens to be an angel number. That means somebody is with you and it means new beginnings. And I have always said that that was my dad right then and there telling me that this is the journey I needed to be on. And my mother-in-law says I have never felt like a spirit or anything is with me, but she said when you guys were saying goodbye, I felt like your father was with you, that he was saying it's okay. And and so I'll never forget being asked to speak at the synagogue, and I was so torn on doing this in public because I've always just gone on the inside and talked to the inmates and other survivors. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And I remember being up there and being so scared and then telling my story and then afterwards feeling that just something was with me. Somebody was next to me, just guiding me. And to talk to people on the outside about this, and I was afraid I was going to be judged. I was afraid I was going to be looked at different, and I was so heavily supported by people who didn't even know me, who wanted to ask questions and who wanted to learn more about me. And I when I say that this journey has saved my life, I truly mean it. I have gotten my kids back, the biggest blessing in the world. I continue to learn and try to break cycles, and for my kids and for their future children and all of that. But every time I do one of these things that I'm asked to do, I feel like somebody is beside me the whole time guiding me, and it's my dad, and I am not a spiritual person. I never have been. And this whole thing has changed my outlook on all of it. I believe in all of it.
What about forgiveness? Were you able to experience that? And what is it like? How do you get there?
So that's a hard one. I say forgiveness is not for everybody. And like I look at my journey and I look at my mom's journey, and I don't ask that she forgive, but I did realize that forgiveness was for me. Like I said, I grew up with so much hate, but the moment that I chose to forgive, a weight was just lifted off my shoulders. I Once I forgave, I said, "Holy moly, I get to be happy. I get to have a good life." Because I never thought that I deserved it, that I was ever going to get there. The moment that I walked out of that prison, my life changed. I started doing the work. I started working on my healing journey. If it wasn't for me forgiving him, I don't know that I ever would have went down that journey. Um, I think that forgiveness is for you. And although it did help him too, it was for me. It was for me to be able to move forward because I had a choice. I could spend the rest of my life hating this man, but what was it going to do? It was never going to bring my dad back. It was only going to cause hate and harm in my life. And the person who did this wasn't going to feel all of that. So what was the point in me have carrying this much anger in my life? Um, Me forgiving him also made him go on his own journey that he's now going on. He made it clear that he didn't feel he deserved my forgiveness. He he was he was hurt. He was lost himself, and he spent 23 years of his life inside just hating himself. The moment I told him that I forgave him and that it was okay to move forward and that I want him to get out and do good things in honor of my father, he just went full force and started doing everything that I asked of him. And that's exactly what I wanted out of all of this.
Sounds quite transformative for you and for him. And I know your mother-in-law, your husband, and Noel and me. I mean, we all felt that day and afterwards that something magical happened in that room. You say your father was there. I don't know what it was, but it was transformative for all of us. It was an emotionally powerful. It was probably one of the most powerful moments I've ever had in my life, watching two people at such odds coming together and respecting their humanity and beginning to actually heal and love. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, you were hugging and and crying, and we were all crying. I mean, that was a given. And now, as you describe, I also want to mention when you spoke at the synagogue in Santa Rosa, you were there with, I think it was four ex-cons who had committed murder and other pretty horrific crimes. And I noticed there you had a real wonderful connection with them. Do you remember that moment?
Oh yes, I knew a couple of them before going into this, and and then I heard the other two's stories as well while I was up there. And when I tell you they all felt like family to me, I truly mean that. I hold space in my heart so much for these men. I watched them sit up there and take accountability for everything they've done, and I watched the work that they had done and seen who they had become, and you would never believe that they spent decades in prison. And it it's so weird. Like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain the feeling I have after meeting each person that I've met. They're one of the people that I met along the way through Grip was a man named Bernard, and he has since passed away. And he was one of the most beautiful souls that I have ever met in my entire life. And when I found out everything that he had did and how he had spent 30 plus years in prison, I was shocked because of the work that he had did and the work that he continued to do on the outside blew me away because I could never imagine anybody in the outside world doing those kind of things. And the connection I have with all of them is forever. They have helped me heal in so many ways. Every time I go inside, I thank them for their time and their support because me being able to go inside and connect with all of these people has changed my life in so many ways. I'm a better mother today because of it. I'm a better person, and I'm a better human being in life. I no longer have hate in my heart the way that I used to. I was nasty. That's not who I am anymore. All I want is peace in life, and I want to understand how we as a society can help one another heal. And because I think it's very important that we help one another. I think that hate is so loud in our world right now. And I just truly encourage people to just slow down and soften their hearts a little bit and to listen and to lead with compassion and kindness in their world. I don't think that forgiveness erases the past, but it's one of the most powerful things that I've ever been a part of. And it has the power to heal in ways that nothing else can. And I think that it changes how we carry ourselves and how we choose to carry others and how we choose to move forward in life. And I think that life is way too short to have so much hate and division. And I think that if we just paused a little bit, listened, and opened our minds a little bit, we could get rid of some of this hate that's going on in this world right now.
Oh, beautifully said. I was going to ask you, were there any last words you were going to give us, but those were profound and poetic. So, Melissa, I want to thank you so very much for your time. Once again, I relived a very powerful experience talking to you again. And I want to thank you and send my regards to your family, all of them, including your new grandson.
Thank you
Congratulations.
so much.
Okay.